The sound of a slap echoed through the gilded ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel, silencing 300 of New York's elite. Everyone watched as Marcus Sterling, the man of the hour, pointed a shaking finger at his wife, Clara. "Get out!" he screamed, his face twisted in rage. "You are nothing but a stain on my reputation. I should have left you in the gutter where I found you." Clara didn't cry. She simply straightened her spine as the security guards grabbed her arms. Marcus thought he had just discarded a piece of trash. He didn't realize that in exactly 5 minutes, a fleet of black phantoms would pull up to the curb, and the man inside would bring Marcus Sterling's entire empire crumbling down. The charity gala for the Sterling Foundation was the event of the season. The chandeliers of the grand ballroom shimmered like diamonds, casting a glow over the silk gowns and bespoke tuxedos of the city's most influential figures. At the center of it all stood Marcus Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Tech, holding a glass of champagne and laughing charmingly at a joke made by a senator. Beside him, however, was a void. Clara stood 3 feet away from her husband, clutching a small, worn, beaded clutch that looked painfully out of place against her off-the-rack grey dress. She wasn't wearing any jewelry. Marcus had told her that morning that jewelry on someone like her would look like tinsel on a street cat. "Stop slouching," a sharp voice hissed in her ear. Clara flinched and turned to see her mother-in-law, Victoria Sterling. The older woman was draped in emeralds that cost more than the house Clara grew up in. Victoria looked at Clara with the same expression one might reserve for a wet dog that had wandered onto a Persian rug. "I'm sorry, Victoria," Clara whispered, straightening her back. "My feet hurt. The heels are a bit tight." "Then suffer in silence," Victoria snapped, taking a sip of her martini. "Tonight is about Marcus. He is announcing the merger with Archer Industries. Do not embarrass him. If anyone asks, you are feeling faint and need to sit in the corner. Do not speak. Do not offer your opinion. And for God's sake, stop looking at the buffet like you've never seen food before." Clara nodded, her stomach tightening. She hadn't eaten all day because she had been busy organizing the guest list, a task Marcus's assistant was supposed to do, but had dumped on her at the last minute. She looked over at her husband. Marcus looked radiant. He was handsome, successful, and charismatic. When they had met 3 years ago, Clara was working as a waitress in a diner near the university. Marcus had been different then, or so she thought. He had seemed to like her simplicity. He had called her his breath of fresh air, away from the suffocating pretenses of his wealthy life. But as soon as the ring was on her finger, the breath of fresh air became suffocating incompetence. "Marcus," a sultry voice purred. Clara watched as a woman in a daring red dress approached her husband. It was Sophia Vance, the daughter of a banking mogul. Sophia was everything Clara wasn't: sophisticated, wealthy, and ruthless. She placed a hand familiarly on Marcus's bicep. "Sophia," Marcus said, his eyes lighting up in a way they never did for Clara anymore. "You look stunning tonight. Is that a new necklace?" "It is," Sophia smiled, leaning in close. "Daddy bought it for me in Paris. Unlike some people, I know how to appreciate fine things." Her eyes flickered dismissively toward Clara before turning back to Marcus. "Are you going to introduce me to the senator?" "Of course," Marcus said, offering his arm to Sophia. Clara took a step forward, instinct kicking in. "Marcus? I thought we were supposed to greet the senator together." Marcus stopped and looked at her. The charm dropped from his face, replaced by cold irritation. The noise of the party seemed to fade as people nearby glanced over, sensing the tension. "Clara," Marcus said, his voice low but carrying a distinct edge of annoyance. "Look at you. You're wearing a dress from a department store rack. You have a stain on your hem. Do you really think you belong in a conversation with Senator Higgins? Clara looked down. There was a tiny drop of water on her hem from a puddle outside. It's just water, Marcus. I can dry it. It's not about the water, Clara, Marcus snapped, loud enough that the circle of people around them went quiet. It's about you. You don't fit. You never have. Just go find somewhere to sit. Stop hovering over me. Sophia smirked, a cruel, satisfied curve of her red lips. Go on, Clara. The waiters are serving mini-burgers in the back. That's more your speed, isn't it? Humiliation burned Clara's cheeks. She gripped her clutch so hard her knuckles turned white. I am your wife, Marcus, she said softly, trying to hold on to a shred of dignity. Unfortunately, Marcus muttered, turning his back on her. He walked away with Sophia on his arm, leaving Clara standing alone in the center of the room, surrounded by whispered laughter. Clara retreated to the edge of the ballroom, near the heavy velvet curtains that led to the terrace. She wanted to leave, to run out into the rainy New York night, but she knew that would only make Marcus angrier. He demanded she be present to maintain the image of a family man, even if he treated her like a ghost. She leaned against the wall, trying to make herself invisible. She closed her eyes, thinking of her grandfather. He was the only family she had left, but she hadn't seen him in 15 years. Her mother had run away from home to marry Clara's father, a poor mechanic, and her grandfather had cut them off. Clara had written to him once, when her parents died, but she never received a reply. She assumed he hated her too. Excuse me. Clara opened her eyes. A waiter was standing there, holding a tray with a single glass of red wine. But he looked nervous. His eyes were darting around the room. Yes? Clara asked. Mr. Sterling asked me to bring this to you, the waiter mumbled, thrusting the glass toward her. Clara frowned. Marcus never sent her drinks. My husband sent this. Yes, ma'am. He said he was sorry for snapping at you. A flicker of hope ignited in Clara's chest. Maybe he did care. Maybe he realized he had gone too far. She took the glass with a small, grateful smile. Thank you. The waiter hurried away almost too quickly. Clara held the glass, watching Marcus across the room. He was laughing with Sophia and his mother. He didn't look like he was thinking about her at all. Suddenly, Sophia detached herself from Marcus's side and began walking straight toward Clara. She moved with purpose, her red dress flowing like liquid fire. She held a large, ornate vase, a Ming Dynasty replica that was part of the hotel's decor, in her hands, seemingly admiring it. Well, well, Sophia said, stopping inches from Clara. Enjoying the corner, Clara? It suits you, like a little mouse in the shadows. Leave me alone, Sophia, Clara said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. I don't think I will, Sophia whispered, stepping closer. You see, Marcus and I have been talking. He's tired of you, Clara. He's tired of your poverty, your lack of education, your drab little existence. He wants a divorce. He's just too polite to say it. That's a lie, Clara said, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Is it? Sophia laughed. Tonight is the night he merges with Archer Industries. My father is on the board of Archer. Do you think Marcus is going to jeopardize $1 billion deal for a waitress? Sophia's eyes gleamed with malice. She looked at the wine in Clara's hand, then at the vase she was holding. Let's help him make the decision, shall we? Before Clara could react, Sophia lunged forward. She deliberately knocked her shoulder into Clara's arm. The red wine splashed out of the glass, not onto Sophia, but onto the pristine white tablecloth of the display table next to them. But that wasn't the worst part. Sophia let go of the Ming vase. Clara gasped and reached out instinctively to catch it, but she was too slow. The vase hit the marble floor with a catastrophic crash that sounded like a gunshot. The music stopped. The chatter ceased. The entire ballroom froze. Sophia instantly recoiled, gasping theatrically, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, Clara, what have you done?" she shrieked, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "You crazy woman, you threw it!" I didn't," Clara stammered, staring at the shattered porcelain. "You dropped it! You bumped into me!" Marcus came storming through the crowd, his face a mask of thunder. Victoria was right behind him. "What is going on here?" Marcus demanded, looking from the broken vase to Clara. "Marcus!" Sophia cried, grabbing his arm and burying her face in his shoulder, feigning tears. "I was just trying to talk to her, to tell her she looked nice, and she just snapped. She threw her wine at me and then smashed the vase. She said she hated you and hated this party." "I didn't," Clara cried, looking around at the sea of accusing faces. "Marcus, please, you have to believe me. She dropped it on purpose." Marcus looked at Clara. There was no sympathy in his eyes, only cold, hard calculation. He saw the spilled wine. He saw the broken vase. He saw the guests whispering, judging, laughing. He saw his reputation being tarnished by the woman he considered his greatest mistake. "You are drunk," Marcus spat, his voice dripping with disgust. "I haven't had a drop to drink. That waiter, you sent the wine." "I sent you nothing," Marcus roared. "Liar! You are a liar and an embarrassment." "Marcus, please." Clara reached for his hand. He slapped her hand away with such force it made a sharp crack. "Don't touch me," he hissed. "I have tolerated your incompetence for 3 years. I have tried to mold you into someone presentable. But you are trash, Clara. You will always be trash." He turned to the security guards who had materialized near the entrance. "Get her out of here," Marcus commanded, pointing at his wife. "Throw her out, and make sure she never sets foot in this hotel again." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "Marcus, it's raining outside. I don't have my coat. I don't have my wallet." "I don't care," Marcus said coldly, turning his back on her to comfort the smirking Sophia. "Walk home. Or better yet, keep walking until you find the gutter you belong in." 2 burly security guards grabbed Clara by the arms. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She looked at her husband's back one last time, her heart hardening into a stone in her chest. As they dragged her toward the large double doors, the guests parted like the Red Sea, sneering and laughing. "Go back to the trailer park," someone shouted. "Look at her shoes, disgusting," Victoria laughed. Clara was shoved through the doors and out onto the wet pavement of the hotel driveway. The heavy doors slammed shut behind her, muting the music and the laughter. She stood there, shivering in the freezing rain, her grey dress instantly soaked. She had nothing. No money. No phone. No husband. She hugged herself, her teeth chattering. She looked down the dark, rain-slicked street. She had nowhere to go. But then she saw lights, blinding, white LED lights cutting through the darkness. It wasn't a taxi. It wasn't a police car. Turning the corner was a convoy, 6 black SUVs with tinted windows, flanking a massive, custom-built Rolls-Royce Phantom. The cars moved with a predatory grace, slowing down as they approached the hotel entrance. Clara stepped back, confused. The convoy came to a halt right in front of her. The lead SUV's door flew open, and 4 men in black tactical suits jumped out. They didn't look like hotel security. They looked like private military. They opened umbrellas, not for themselves, but to create a dry canopy leading to the Rolls-Royce. The rear door of the Rolls-Royce opened. An old man stepped out. He was leaning on a cane, topped with a diamond the size of a walnut. He wore a suit that cost more than the entire hotel. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp, blue, and terrifyingly familiar. He looked at the shivering girl in the grey dress. He looked at the tears mixing with the rain on her face. The old man didn't smile. He simply extended a trembling hand. "Clara," he said, his voice raspy but commanding. "I found you." It was Silas Thorne, the owner of Thorne Global, the man who owned half of the shipping routes in the Atlantic, the man who was rumored to be richer than God. And for the first time in 15 years, he was looking at his granddaughter. The rain hammered against the roof of the Rolls-Royce Phantom, a rhythmic drumming that felt a world away from the silent, hermetically sealed sanctuary of the car's interior. The seats were upholstered in cream leather, softer than anything Clara had ever touched. The air smelled of expensive mahogany and faint, clean citrus. Clara sat trembling on the edge of the seat, water pooling around her cheap shoes, dripping onto the pristine floor mats. She felt filthy. She felt like she was soiling this beautiful machine just by existing in it. Silas Thorne sat opposite her. Up close, he was even more terrifying than the legend suggested. His face was a map of hard-won battles, his eyes like chipped flint. He looked at the water dripping from her hair, at the red mark on her hand where Marcus had slapped her, and the shabbiness of her dress. His hand, the one gripping the diamond-topped cane, turned white at the knuckles. "Arthur," Silas growled, not looking away from Clara. "Sir?" The driver responded instantly through the intercom. "Turn up the heat and get me the medical kit. Now." The partition slid down, and a man in the front passenger seat, Silas's personal assistant, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Henderson, handed back a heavy velvet blanket and a first aid box. Silas took the blanket and draped it over Clara's shoulders himself. His movements were stiff with age, but gentle. "You're freezing, child. Wrap up." Clara pulled the velvet tight around her. It was warm and heavy, a shield against the world. I don't understand," she stammered, her teeth still chattering. "You're Silas Thorne. You're the wolf of the Atlantic. Why are you here? You hate me. You hated my mother." Silas let out a long, ragged sigh. He leaned back, the fight draining out of him for a fleeting second, replaced by a deep, ancient sorrow. "I didn't hate her, Clara," he said quietly. "I was a stubborn, prideful fool. When she left to marry your father, I thought she was throwing her life away. I thought if I cut her off, she would come crawling back. I wanted to teach her a lesson." He looked at his hands. "Instead, I taught myself how to live with regret. By the time I tried to find her, the accident had already happened." Clara felt a lump in her throat. "I wrote to you when they died. I was 18. I had nowhere to go." Silas's eyes flashed with a sudden, dark fire. "I never received a letter." "What?" Clara blinked. "But I sent it to the headquarters. I sent 3. "My former secretary," Silas said, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble, "filtered my mail. She decided what was important enough for me to see. She threw your letters in the trash, Clara. I only found out 2 days ago. I fired her. Then I made sure she would never work in this city again." He leaned forward, his blue eyes locking onto hers. "I have spent the last 48 hours tearing the world apart to find you. My investigators told me you married a businessman named Marcus Sterling. They told me you were happy." Silas gestured to her wet hair, her bruised hand, the tear in her dress. "Is this happiness, Clara?" Clara looked down. The dam broke. The years of holding it together, of trying to be the perfect wife, of enduring Victoria's insults and Marcus's neglect, all came crashing down. "No," she whispered, a tear sliding down her cheek. He says I'm an embarrassment. He says I'm trash because I don't come from money. His mother makes me clean the floors when the maids are off. His mistress, she humiliated me tonight." And he took her side. Silas listened. He didn't interrupt. But with every word Clara spoke, the atmosphere in the car grew heavier, more charged with a terrifying energy. It was the energy of a storm gathering before a hurricane. When Clara finished, wiping her eyes with the corner of the velvet blanket, Silas was silent for a long moment. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief made of silk, handing it to her. Marcus Sterling. Silas tested the name on his tongue like it was poison. Sterling Tech, small-time hardware manufacturer, trying to merge with Archer Industries to avoid bankruptcy. Clara looked up, surprised. "How do you know that?" "I know everything, Clara. That's my business." Silas tapped his cane on the floor. "He threw you out like garbage because he thinks you have no value. He thinks you are just a poor girl with no connections." Silas smiled then. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a shark's smile. It was the smile that had devoured corporations and toppled economies. "He is about to learn that he didn't throw out a pauper," Silas said softly. "He threw out the sole heiress to the Thorn Empire. You are worth more than his entire lineage combined, multiplied by 1,000. Clara stared at him. "Heiress? You are my blood, Clara, my only living relative. Everything I have, the shipping lines, the tech firms, the banks, the real estate, it's all yours." He pressed a button on the armrest. "Henderson? Yes, Mr. Thorne? Contact the board of directors. Freeze all pending acquisitions involving Sterling Tech. And call Jean-Pierre." "The stylist, sir?" "Yes. Tell him to meet us in the presidential suite of the St. Regis in 5 minutes. Bring the entire collection." Clara panicked. "The St. Regis? Grandfather, no. I can't go back in there. Marcus. He told security to ban me. Everyone laughed at me." Silas reached out and placed his large, calloused hand over hers. His grip was iron. "We are not going back in so you can be Clara Sterling, the rejected wife," Silas said firmly. "We are going back in so you can be Clara Thorne. And a thorn does not run. A thorn does not hide." He looked at the hotel entrance, where the rain was still pouring. "They humiliated you in public, Clara. So we will destroy them in public. Are you ready to take back what is yours?" Clara looked at the old man. She saw the strength in his eyes, a strength she realized she shared. She thought of Sophia's smirk. She thought of Marcus's cold back as he walked away. She took a deep breath, drying her tears. She straightened her spine, just as she had tried to do in the ballroom, but this time it wasn't out of fear. It was out of anger. "Yes," Clara said. "I'm ready." Inside the grand ballroom of the St. Regis, the atmosphere was jubilant. The unpleasantness of the incident with Marcus's wife had been quickly forgotten, washed away by more champagne and the glittering prospect of money. Marcus Sterling stood on the raised stage at the front of the room, tapping a spoon against his crystal glass. The room went silent. He looked dashing, unbothered, and triumphant. Beside him stood Sophia Vance, beaming like the cat who had not only got the cream, but also bought the dairy farm. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice smooth and confident, "thank you for bearing with the earlier interruption. Sometimes we must trim the dead weight from our lives to truly soar." A ripple of polite, sycophantic laughter went through the crowd. Victoria Sterling, sitting in the front row, clapped the loudest. "Tonight is a historic night. Marcus continued. "I am proud to announce that Sterling Tech has officially entered into a partnership with Archer Industries. This merger will make us the dominant force in global telecommunications." Applause broke out. Waiters circulated with fresh bottles of Dom Perignon. Marcus raised his glass. "To the future. A future where we are unburdened by the past." "To the future," the crowd echoed. Outside the ballroom doors in the marble foyer, the hotel manager, a nervous man named Mr. Gables, was currently sweating through his suit. He was standing in front of the main revolving doors, blocking the path of 4 men in black tactical gear who had just marched in from the rain. Excuse me, Mr. Gables squeaked. "You cannot be in here with weapons. This is a private event. I will call the police." The lead security officer didn't even blink. He simply stepped aside. Behind him, the revolving doors spun slowly. Silas Thorne stepped into the lobby. He had changed his coat, but he still carried the diamond cane. He walked with a heavy, rhythmic thud-click of his cane against the marble. Mr. Gables froze. He recognized the face. Everyone in New York recognized the face. It was the face that appeared on the cover of Forbes and Time every year. "More Mr. Thorne?" Gables stammered, his face draining of color. We weren't expecting you. The Sterling Gala. Surely you aren't here for that." Silas stopped and looked at the little man. "Mr. Gables, you have owned this hotel for 10 years, correct?" Yes, sir." "You have a mortgage on the property with First National Bank," Silas stated calmly. Yes, I do. I bought First National Bank this morning," Silas said, checking his vintage pocket watch. "I am calling in your loan. In full. Immediately." Mr. Gables's knees buckled. "Mr. Thorne, please, that's $50 million. I can't pay that tonight." "Then you no longer own this hotel," Silas said simply. "I do. And as the owner, I am entering my ballroom." Silas didn't wait for a response. He turned back to the doors. "Clara, come." The revolving door spun one more time. If Clara had been a ghost before, she was a goddess now. Jean-Pierre and his team had worked a miracle in 20 minutes. Gone was the damp, grey, off-the-rack dress. In its place, Clara wore a gown of midnight blue velvet that seemed to absorb the light. It was strapless, hugging her figure before flaring out in a dramatic train. It was elegant, regal, and cost more than Marcus's annual salary. Around her neck sat the Star of the North, a necklace of sapphires and diamonds that had belonged to Silas's late wife, a piece of jewelry that had been in a museum vault until an hour ago. Her hair was swept up in an intricate modern chignon, revealing her long neck. Her makeup was sharp, accentuating her eyes, making them look fierce and piercing. She didn't look down. She didn't slouch. She looked like a queen returning from exile to execute the traitors. "Ready?" Silas asked, offering his arm. Clara took it. Her hand wasn't shaking anymore. "Let's go." Inside the ballroom, Marcus was just finishing his speech. "And now, I would like to invite Mr. David Archer, CEO of Archer Industries, to the stage to sign the papers." The heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom didn't just open. They were thrown wide by the tactical security team. The sound echoed like a thunderclap, drowning out the applause. Every head turned. 300 people gasped in unison. Silas Thorne walked in, his cane striking the floor with authority. And on his arm was a woman who looked vaguely familiar, yet completely unrecognizable. "Is that—" Victoria Sterling squinted, her martini glass pausing halfway to her mouth. "No, it can't be," Sophia whispered, her smile faltering. Marcus froze on stage. He blinked. He looked at the woman in the midnight blue gown. He recognized the eyes, but everything else, it was impossible. The room parted. People scrambled out of the way of Silas Thorne. The silence was deafening, heavier than the earlier silence when the vase had broken. This was the silence of predators recognizing a bigger predator. Silas and Clara walked straight down the center aisle, stopping 10 feet from the stage. Marcus gripped the podium. Mr. Thorne, he stuttered, his charm evaporating instantly. I am honored. We didn't know you were coming. We are just concluding the merger. Silas ignored him. He turned to the crowd, his voice booming without a microphone. I apologize for the intrusion, Silas said, his voice dripping with false politeness. I was informed that a member of my family was treated with disrespect in this establishment earlier this evening. I came to rectify the situation. A murmur went through the crowd. Family? Silas Thorne had no family. He was a recluse. Marcus laughed nervously. Mr. Thorne, there must be a mistake. We are all friends here. No one has been disrespected. Is that so? Silas looked at Marcus with eyes like ice. You threw a young woman out into the rain. You called her trash. You accused her of breaking a vase that she did not break. Marcus paled. He looked at Clara. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Clara, he whispered. Clara stepped forward. The heels of her diamond-encrusted shoes clicked on the floor. She looked up at her husband, her soon-to-be ex-husband. Hello, Marcus, she said, her voice clear and ringing like a bell. I believe you have my coat. And my wedding ring. Clara, look at you, Marcus breathed. He couldn't help himself. She was breathtaking. Greed flickered in his eyes. Where did you get that dress? Who paid for this? I did, Silas interrupted sharply. I pay for my granddaughter's clothes. Granddaughter. The word hung in the air. The gasp from the crowd sucked the oxygen out of the room. Victoria Sterling dropped her glass. It shattered, mirroring the vase from earlier, but no one cared. Granddaughter, Sophia Vance shrieked, stepping forward. That's a lie. She's a nobody. She's a waitress. Silas turned his gaze to Sophia. It was a look that could wither a flower. And who might you be? Silas asked, though he knew perfectly well. I am Sophia Vance. My father is Robert Vance, the CEO of Vance Banking. Ah, yes, Silas nodded. Robert Vance, I spoke to him 5 minutes ago. Sophia smirked. Then you know not to mess with us. Actually, Silas continued, I called him to let him know that Thorne Global is pulling all its assets from Vance Banking. As of tomorrow morning, your father's bank will be insolvent. He was crying when I hung up. Sophia's smirk fell off her face. Her knees gave way, and she grabbed a table for support. Silas turned back to Marcus. And you, Mr. Sterling, you are announcing a merger with Archer Industries. Yes, Marcus said, trying to salvage the situation, sweating profusely. David Archer is right here. David, tell him. David Archer, a balding man in a tuxedo, had been shrinking into the shadows at the back of the stage. He stepped forward nervously. Mr. Thorne, David Archer said, bowing his head in submission. David, Silas said, who owns the majority share of Archer Industries? David gulped. You do, sir, through your shell corporation, Omega Holdings. Correct, Silas said. So, as the owner of Archer Industries, I am vetoing this merger. What? Marcus screamed, his composure shattering. You can't do that. We have a contract. We have a deal. If this merger doesn't happen, Sterling Tech goes under. I have leveraged everything. I know, Silas said coldly. That is the point. Silas turned to Clara. Clara, my dear, would you like to buy Sterling Tech? It seems the stock price is about to drop to 0. Clara looked at Marcus. She saw the panic in his eyes, the same panic she had felt when he threw her out. She looked at Sophia, who was weeping silently. She looked at Victoria, who was looking at Clara with sudden, desperate, fawning admiration. "No, grandfather," Clara said. "I don't want it. It's broken, just like that vase." She reached up and unclasped the cheap gold wedding band from her finger. She held it up. "You said I belonged in the gutter, Marcus," she said. She tossed the ring. It bounced on the floor and rolled to his feet. "But it seems you're the one who's going to end up there." The morning after the St. Regis Gala, the sun rose over New York City with a cruel, blinding brightness. For Clara, waking up in the master suite of Silas Thorne's penthouse overlooking Central Park, the light felt like a baptism. For Marcus Sterling, waking up in his bachelor pad in Tribeca, it felt like an interrogation lamp. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, his head pounding. His phone had been vibrating incessantly since 6:00 a.m. He picked it up, squinting at the screen. 34 missed calls, 12 from his CFO, 10 from his mother, and 0 from Sophia Vance. He opened his banking app. A notification flashed in red. Account frozen. Pending investigation. He swiped to the newsfeed. The headline made his stomach turn over. The Billionaire Princess. How the waitress wife of Marcus Sterling was secretly the heiress to the Thorne Empire. But it was the sub-headline that killed him. Sterling Tech shares plummet 70% following merger collapse. Marcus threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall, a fitting metaphor for his life. He stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. He needed a plan. He was Marcus Sterling. He was a survivor. He had charmed his way into high society, and he could charm his way out of this disaster. He walked to the window. Down on the street, he could see news vans parked outside his building. They were waiting for him. "Fine," Marcus whispered, a dark idea forming in his mind. "You want a story? I'll give you a story." Across the city, in the serene, climate-controlled library of the Thorne penthouse, Clara was sitting opposite her grandfather. The room was lined with books, bound in leather, and a fire crackled in the hearth despite the central heating. "You look different," Silas observed. He was drinking black coffee, reading a physical newspaper. Clara touched her face. "I feel different. I feel angry." "Good," Silas nodded. "Anger is fuel. Sadness is just an anchor. You need fuel for what comes next." "What comes next?" Clara asked. "I just want a divorce, grandfather. I want him out of my life." Silas put down the paper. "Clara, you are thinking like a waitress. You need to think like a Thorne. Marcus Sterling is a narcissist. He just lost his company, his reputation, and his cash cow, you. Do you think he will just sign the papers and walk away? He has no choice. He has nothing. He has a voice," Silas warned, "and he knows how to use it. A man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous enemy you can have." Just then, the heavy oak doors opened. Mr. Henderson, Silas's assistant, walked in. His face was grim. He held a tablet in his hand. "Sir, madam," Henderson said, "you need to see this. It's airing live on Channel 8 right now." He placed the tablet on the coffee table. On the screen, a daytime talk show host, a woman known for her aggressive interviews, was sitting opposite Marcus Sterling. Marcus didn't look like the arrogant bully from the night before. He looked broken. He was wearing a simple sweater, not a suit. His hair was slightly messy. He had mastered the art of looking like a victim. "I just don't understand it, Linda," Marcus was saying to the host, his voice cracking with emotion. "I loved her. I picked her up when she had nothing. I gave her a home, a life. I tried to protect her from the pressures of my world." "And the incident at the gala?" the host asked, leaning in. "Witnesses say you threw her out." Marcus wiped a fake tear from his eye. I was trying to get her help. Clara. She has struggled with mental instability for years. The drinking, the outbursts. That night she was violent. She attacked a guest. I had to remove her for everyone's safety. I didn't know her grandfather was Silas Thorne. She never told me. She lied to me for 3 years. Clara gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. He's lying. He's twisting everything. On the screen, Marcus looked directly into the camera. I believe this was a setup. She and her grandfather planned this. They wanted to destroy my company. It was corporate sabotage disguised as a marriage. I am the victim here. I have been used, manipulated, and discarded by a billionaire bully and his deceitful granddaughter. The host nodded sympathetically. And now you've lost your company? Everything, Marcus whispered. But I won't stop fighting. I am her husband. By law, half of everything she has, half of everything she inherited during our marriage, belongs to me. I just want what is fair. Silas reached out and turned the tablet off. The screen went black, but Marcus's words seemed to hang in the air like toxic smoke. Clara was shaking. He wants half. He wants half of your money. He is trying to leverage the community property laws, Silas said, his voice deadly calm. He is arguing that since you were discovered as the heiress while married to him, the acquisition of your status is a marital asset. It is a desperate, flimsy legal argument. But in the court of public opinion, it's powerful. People won't believe him, Clara said. They saw him. People love a fallen hero, and they love to hate the rich, Silas said. Right now, you are the rich villain. He is the poor husband who was duped. Silas stood up, leaning heavily on his cane. He walked to the window and looked out at the park. Henderson, Silas barked. Yes, sir. Call the legal team, the sharks, not the corporate lawyers. I want the litigators, the ones we use for hostile takeovers. Understood. And Clara, Silas turned to her. Yes? You are going to stop hiding in this penthouse. Marcus wants a media war? We won't give him one. We will give him the truth. But first, we need to cut off his supply lines. How? We are going to buy his debt, Silas said, a cold smile touching his lips. Every credit card, every car loan, the mortgage on his parents' house. We are going to buy it all. And then we are going to squeeze. 3 days later, the law offices of Bradford, Cohen & Stein were located in a glass tower on Wall Street. This was where Marcus had set up his war room. He had managed to convince a high-profile divorce attorney, eager for the publicity of taking on Silas Thorne, to represent him on a contingency basis. Marcus sat at the conference table, feeling better. The public sympathy was rolling in. His GoFundMe page for legal defense had raised $50,000 in 2 days. He felt like he was back in control. They're here, his lawyer, a man with slicked-back hair named Richard, said. The doors opened. Silas Thorne did not enter. Instead, Clara walked in. She was alone. Marcus blinked. He expected a phalanx of lawyers. He expected the old man. But it was just Clara. She was wearing a tailored white suit that looked like armor. She carried a single leather folder. Clara, Marcus said, putting on his sad, puppy dog face. I'm so glad you came. Can we stop this madness? I just want to talk to my wife. Sit down, Marcus, Clara said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it had a timbre he had never heard before. It was the voice of someone who gave orders, not someone who took them. Richard, the lawyer, scoffed. Mrs. Sterling, where is your counsel? It is highly irregular for you to be here alone. I don't need counsel to deliver a message, Clara said, taking a seat at the head of the table. She didn't open her folder yet. We are prepared to sue for 50% of the Thorne Trust, Richard said aggressively. We have witnesses who will testify to your emotional instability and the fraud you perpetrated on my client." Clara looked at the lawyer, then turned her gaze to Marcus. "Fraud," she repeated. "That's an interesting word. Speaking of fraud, Marcus, do you remember the Cayman Islands account, the one under the name MS Consulting?" Marcus froze. His heart skipped a beat. "I don't know what you're talking about." Clara opened the folder. She slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a bank statement. "You have been skimming money from the Sterling Foundation charity for 5 years," Clara said calmly. "Donations meant for orphanages. You funneled them into a shell company to pay for your gambling debts and your gifts to Miss Vance." Marcus snatched the paper. His hands were shaking. This is illegal. You can't have this. This is private financial data." "My grandfather owns the bank in the Caymans, Marcus," Clara said. "We didn't hack anything. We just looked at our own ledgers." Richard, the lawyer, looked at the paper, then at Marcus. The color drained from his face. Embezzling from a charity wasn't just a civil matter, it was federal prison time. "You see," Clara continued, leaning forward, "we aren't going to negotiate a settlement. There will be no 50%. There will be no spousal support." You wouldn't," Marcus stammered. "If you release this, I go to jail." "That is entirely up to you," Clara said. She pulled out a second document. It was a divorce decree. Simple, clean. "Sign this," Clara commanded. "You walk away with nothing. No money, no claim on the Thorne estate. You issue a public apology, admitting you lied about my mental health. You admit to the affair with Sophia Vance. And if I don't?" Marcus gritted his teeth. "Then I give this bank statement to the FBI," Clara said. "And I give the security footage from the hotel to the news stations. Oh, did I mention? Grandfather bought the hotel. We have the unedited footage of you slapping my hand. We have the audio of you calling me trash." She stood up, smoothing her suit jacket. "You have 1 hour to decide, Marcus. Freedom and poverty? Or prison and infamy?" Clara turned and walked toward the door. She didn't look back. She didn't need to see his face to know she had won. But as she reached the handle, Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "You think you've won?" he screamed, the mask slipping completely. "You're still nothing. You're just a puppet for that old man. You couldn't do any of this without him. You're weak, Clara. You've always been weak." Clara paused. She looked at the door handle, then turned around slowly. "You're right, Marcus. I was weak. I was weak because I loved you. I made myself small so you could feel big." She walked back, leaning close to his face, her eyes burning with a cold, blue fire that matched her grandfather's. "But the woman you threw out into the rain that night? She died in the cold. I'm what survived, and I don't need my grandfather to destroy you. I could have done it myself. He just gave me the shoes to do it in style." She checked her watch. 58 minutes, Marcus. Tick-tock. She left the room, leaving Marcus Sterling staring at the paper that held his life in the balance, while his high-priced lawyer quietly began packing his briefcase to leave. Scene shift. The pavement at outside. Clara walked out of the building. The air was crisp. The sun was shining. Silas was waiting in the Rolls-Royce at the curb. He rolled down the window as she approached. "Well?" he asked. "He'll sign," Clara said, getting into the car. "He's terrified." Silas chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Good. The charity embezzlement was a nice touch. I taught you well." "He said I was a puppet," Clara said, looking at her hands. "Are you?" "No," Clara said firmly. "I'm the puppeteer." "Good," Silas said, "because we aren't done yet. Breaking Marcus was just the warm-up. Now we have to deal with the person who actually broke the vase." Clara frowned. Sophia? She's ruined. Her father's bank is collapsing. Not Sophia, Silas said, his face darkening. The person who told Sophia to target you. The person who has been whispering in Marcus's ear for years. The person who actually runs the Sterling family. Clara's eyes widened. Victoria. Exactly, Silas said. Marcus is an idiot, but his mother, she is a viper, and she just sent a text to my private number. What does she want? She wants a meeting, Silas said. She says she knows something about your mother, something about the car accident that killed your parents. Clara felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was an accident, a drunk driver. That's what the police report said, Silas said grimly, but Victoria Sterling seems to think otherwise. And if she's right, then this war just became a blood feud. Victoria Sterling sat in the private booth of the dimly lit bistro, her hands clasping a glass of whiskey. She didn't look like the haughty matriarch of the gala anymore. She looked like a cornered rat. Her expensive jewelry was gone, sold perhaps to pay for legal retainers, and her eyes darted nervously toward the door. I want $10 million, Victoria said, her voice shaking slightly, but her chin held high. And a private jet to Zurich. In exchange, I give you the file. What file? Clara asked, her heart pounding against her ribs. She sat next to Silas, whose face was a mask of stone. The police report from 15 years ago ruled your parents' death a drunk driving accident, Victoria whispered, leaning in. But it wasn't. The driver was sober. He was an employee of Sterling Logistics. Silas went rigid. The air in the booth turned frigid. Explain. Your father. Clara's father. He was a mechanic. A good one, Victoria sneered, looking at Clara with disdain. He was doing contract work on our fleet. He found a hidden compartment in one of the trucks. He found what my late husband was smuggling. He threatened to go to the police. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. The room seemed to spin. So you killed them? You killed my parents because my father was honest? It was supposed to be a warning, Victoria hissed. Run them off the road, scare them into silence. But the driver, he hit them too hard. The car flipped. It wasn't murder, it was business necessity. Silas stood up, his cane shaking in his hand. For a moment, Clara thought he would strike the woman. You took my daughter, he rasped, his voice sounding like tearing metal. You took my only child for smuggling profits? I protected my family, Victoria snapped, and now I'm protecting myself. The file proves everything. The payments to the driver, the police bribes, the cover-up. You want closure, Silas? You want the truth? Buy it from me. Or I burn it, and you'll never be sure. Clara placed a hand on her grandfather's arm to steady him. She felt the rage vibrating through his frame, but she forced herself to remain calm. She looked at Victoria with eyes that had gone completely dead. You think this is a negotiation, Victoria? Clara said softly. It's my word against yours, Victoria smirked, regaining some of her arrogance. Without that file, it's just a story. And who would believe the desperate ramblings of a woman losing her fortune? Clara reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. The screen was glowing. Actually, Clara said, it's your word against the live stream I just broadcast to the district attorney's personal cloud. Victoria's smirk vanished. What? Grandfather didn't come here to negotiate, Clara said, standing up. We came here to get a confession, and you just gave it to us. Sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder with every second. Victoria Sterling didn't go quietly. As the police officers swarmed the bistro, dragging her away in handcuffs, she screamed curses at Clara and Silas, her facade of high society elegance completely shattered. For Clara, watching the woman who had tormented her for years and killed her parents, being shoved into the back of a squad car was not a moment of joy. It was a moment of release. The heavy weight she hadn't realized she was carrying finally lifted. The fallout was swift and brutal. With Victoria's confession and the exposure of the embezzlement, the Sterling name became toxic. Marcus lost everything. The divorce was finalized in record time. He was last seen working as a shift manager at a car rental agency in Jersey City, trying to pay off his mounting legal debts. Sophia Vance's family bank collapsed under the weight of the Thorn withdrawal. She was forced to sell her jewelry and move into a small apartment, far away from the social circles she used to rule. 1 year later, Clara stood in the boardroom of the newly rebranded Thorn Sterling Enterprises. She wasn't wearing the grey, off-the-rack dress anymore. She wore a bespoke crimson suit that commanded attention. At the head of the table sat Silas. He looked older, frailer, but his eyes were bright. He slid a single file across the mahogany table toward her. "It's time," Silas said softly. Clara opened the file. It was the deed of transfer. Silas was stepping down as chairman. He was naming Clara as the new CEO of the entire Thorn empire. "Are you sure?" Clara asked, looking at her grandfather. "People will say I'm only here because of my name." Silas smiled, leaning back in his chair. "Let them talk. You rebuilt the tech division from the ground up. You doubled our charity outreach. You didn't inherit this job, Clara. You earned it. You turned the pain they gave you into power." Clara signed the paper. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the city that had once rejected her. It was raining again, just like that night at the hotel. But this time, she wasn't shivering in the cold. She was safe, she was loved, and she was powerful. She looked at her reflection in the glass. The sad, invisible wife was gone. The Queen had taken her throne, and that is the incredible story of Clara and her journey from a despised wife to a powerful billionaire heiress. It's a reminder that true worth isn't about what you wear or who you know, but about the strength you carry inside you. And sometimes, karma arrives in a Rolls-Royce Phantom, just when you need it most. I hope you felt the satisfaction of seeing Marcus and his cruel family finally get what they deserved. It's always satisfying to see bullies stripped of their power and the underdog rise to the top. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more drama-filled stories like this one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. I have a question for you. Do you think Marcus deserved a second chance, or was his punishment exactly what he needed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.